I need to verify that everybody can hear me when I call your name. Can you just mention verbally that you can hear me? Rich Barnes, can you hear me?
You're muted, Rich.
You're muted. Can you hear me?
Now I'm good.
Yes. All right. Ruben Beatty, can you hear me?
Yes.
Thank you. Dave McKenna?
Yes.
Dan?
Yes.
Emily, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. Thanks.
Harbor?
Yes.
Okay, all right. We'll call this meeting to order. It's 7:02. Can we start by approving the minutes of our last?
Roll call. Roll call.
Is that right? Okay. We'll do roll call for attendance. Do I call it?
Yes, we call it. Sure, Jeff Budgell.
Here.
Rich Barnes.
Here.
Ruben, Fred Beebe.
Here.
Dave McKenna.
Here.
Dan Wanzon.
Here.
Do I have to name the other people in attendance?
Okay. Do we have a quorum?
All three.
Fantastic. Could I get a motion to approve the minutes of our last meeting, which were included in the packet? That meeting would have been May 2nd of 2019.
I'll set the motion.
Second, please.
I'll second that.
All right, thank you. Any corrections, deletions, modifications?
No.
All those in favor then?
Aye.
Signal by
We got to do a roll.
Aye.
We have to do a roll call vote? All right, I'm sorry.
Jeff Budgell.
Yes.
Rich Barnes.
Yes.
Fred Beebe.
Yes.
Dave McKenna.
Yes.
Dan Wanzon.
Yes.
Unanimous.
Fantastic. Next up on our agenda is a presentation on the Metro train station. We have a presenter.
Today we have a brief or a short presentation about the Metro Station. This is just meant to give you a little bit of history about the project and take you through phase 1 and then talk about the next steps. The city has a professional services agreement with CDM Smith, which we had for phase 1, which started back in 2016. Is why I want to kind of give you a little bit of background about the project and kind of catch you up to speed to where we are now. And then we're starting phase 2. CDM Smith was selected again as our professional services. And I'll hand it over to Ben Harbor, who is our project manager with CDM
Thank you, Corey. Can everyone hear me okay?
Yes.
Yeah.
Great. I'm going to share my content if that's okay with everyone. Well, first of all, I want to say, under the given circumstances, it's a pleasure to meet everyone on the commission and for our first meeting. Feel free to interrupt if there are any questions. As Corey mentioned, CDM Smith and our team was brought on several years ago. Staff was looking at some of the challenges of the existing train station in terms of maintenance and other issues. Started out kind of small, and through a lot of hard work, I think, on the city's part, and we were fortunate to be a part of that. We've got a very interesting project. So I'm not sure how familiar everyone is, but hopefully they've received the packet. I'll try to go through this relatively quickly, assuming that there may be a decent number of questions because there is a lot of historic material. First of all, just want to introduce myself. As Corey mentioned, my name is Ben Harbour. I am the project manager for CDM Smith, and carried this project from the beginning to today. And I lead a team of engineers and architects from CDM Smith, as well as sub-consultants, including KMI architects and engineers, and several other consultants. So we're pleased to be here.
Hey, Ben?
Yes, go ahead.
I need to stop you for a second because we didn't do written communication or public comment. We need to get that on the agenda.
Sure,
Well,
go ahead.
Each one where it was after roll call.
Yeah. Well, yes, if there's anybody that has any written or verbal receipt, communications for the commission.
So there's no public in attendance. Is there any public on the line? There's no public on the line, so there's no public. We're not receiving it written. I checked the email prior to the meeting. There was no written correspondence, and we have a phone open right now for public. There was no one on the public comment line. So I'm sorry. Yeah, sorry about that. Go ahead, Ben.
My bad.
All right, it's absolutely fine, Mike. So just in terms of the agenda, I want to go over a little bit of the project history, what brought about the project in terms of need, the existing conditions. I know everyone's familiar with the downtown, but just again, to show a few images to kind of orientate everyone. Just briefly on the alternatives previously considered, and then talk a little bit about the selected site alternative. That'll move us on to talking about the current architectural character phase that we are currently in, and that the ABC will be obviously a big part of going forward. And then I'll also do just a quick funding summary and then answer any questions. So just really quickly, don't need to go down through the list, but the existing station had some identified issues in terms of maintenance. It was built in the 1960s, like many other stations along the Union Pacific corridor. And then also, it's a very tight space, so there have been issues just in terms of safety, trying to bring pedestrians, bikes, all these other different modes of transportation, having drop-offs, and then supporting the initiatives that the city has taken over the last 30 years in terms of transit-oriented development and making the downtown a more walkable community. So, some issues. Just to orientate everyone, the main inbound station that takes you into the city is the station house that everyone thinks about. There's a small pedestrian underpass that's not accessible to those with disabilities. It just has stairs. And this is the location of the platform. The platform extends across York Street. As I mentioned, it's a very tight space, and the city over the years has tried to obviously put as much parking as possible for commuters. And what also freed up some opportunities that I'll get into was the parking garage investments that the city has undertaken in the downtown, again, over the last 30 years. That has actually created some opportunities to take a look at potentially creating more access to the site, working through some of the vehicle circulation and pedestrian circulation. Just a quick reminder, some of these images, when I saved it down, dropped a little bit of resolution. I apologize, but I think you're familiar with this. This is looking east at the main inbound station. Right now, there's not even enough space for an accessible sidewalk. And then for the ADA parking spaces, there's no sidewalk. So when you get out of your car, you basically have to walk in the path of traffic to go to the station. It's just a very tight site, which is not atypical with the time the station was built. Just a reminder, obviously with Robert Palmer Drive, most of the vehicular traffic flow is not impeded by Union Pacific and Metro trains. But one of the biggest issues, obviously commuters and people using the streets, just trying to connect the north and south sides of the street. So that was another issue that we wanted to address. And then finally, on the south side, again, very similar situation. There's a lot of surface parking, people having to walk across, and there's no drop-off area. So if anyone decides to park and wait for someone here, there's no way to get around them. So we've got very limited space on the south side as well. And as I mentioned, just a reminder that the platform extends through the, through York Street, which is not the best condition. And we did take a look at trying to consolidate the platform either to the east or the west. And I'll get into that in a moment. And just for reference, you can see how close the parking garage is. And then we've got several others that are just to the north as well and the south. In terms of the existing condition, and I think Corey and Public Works are probably more familiar than anyone else with this, that existing underpass, besides not just being ADA accessible, floods on occasion. There's issues just in terms of visibility down there as well. It's very tight quarters. The existing station, a lot of the mechanical ventilation air conditioning systems are past their useful life, and the structure was designed as very utilitarian structure, but that's about it. Just quickly, systems of the building, again, date back to the 1960s, just like a house in desperate need of repair. And again, I'm sorry for the pixelation, but just wanted to show, we did look at moving the platform, for example, to the east, just as an exercise. And this is York Street. And obviously, just to prove out that if we did that and moved the station, let's say, further east, it would not be near the downtown business district. There'd be a lot of issues with bringing drop-off and more circulation. It's not a very easily accessible spot. We also looked at moving the platform to the west, consolidating the platform, potentially closing off the Addison and Cottage Grove intersection. But two issues, obviously, with that. For safety reasons, you do not want to build a platform into the curve. So we had that conversation with Metro and Union Pacific. And then secondly, just from a downtown access emergency service perspective, the determination was made by the city not to pursue this option. Okay. So the reason we kind of wanted to go through that is it's actually a very tight space and we can't really move things to the east and to the west. So we just wanted to demonstrate that those parameters were really set in terms of where we could put the station. Additionally, that mid-block underpass is really only used for commuters currently. There's no really benefit to those that are crossing on New York. So we just did some quick sketches to take a look at, again, I know these are pixelated, to take a look at what some of the massing could be, taking a look at if we put a ramp to a pedestrian underpass starting at York Street, or if we started it closer to Addison on the back end of the station. So this is we We went through public comment along the way. We had several workshops with our staff at City Hall, meeting with the public. We had online surveys as well, presenting a lot of the information, different alternatives, looking for feedback, information from commuters on how they use the station, their issues, etc. With that, working with Public Works and working with other city staff, the determination was made that the best location for this new station would be in a very similar location, but just slightly to the west. And then to put an ADA accessible ramp that would go from the station down, new wider 12-foot underpass, and then be able to come up to a much larger outbound station. We also looked at warming shelters, rearranging the parking from angled parking to some parallel parking to allow a pace drop off, as well as for private vehicles. And on the other side, we got rid of a lot of that surface parking to create a larger drop off space and a larger plaza. And again, it freed up a lot of real estate, getting rid of some of that paved area for some more landscaped areas, and allowing for kind of more of a grandness that goes with the downtown, in our opinion. And then the project did not just stop with kind of the boundary of where the current station is. We also took on west of the station, rearranging the existing parking to create a safe pedestrian access from the station, not only over to the parking garage, but to all the parking, basically keeping it separated from the drive lanes on both sides and limiting the number of access points into that parking. So again, trying to create a much safer downtown. Just wanted to give an example of, or kind of an enlargement of what the downtown station would look like. This would increase the station by about 25% over its current size. So seeing kind of a 24-hour waiting area, keeping a coffee shop or another vendor. And then we would have fully accessible functions. So instead of just having one unisex restroom, we'd have men, women, etc., having to keep the ticket office in a larger waiting area. The opposite side, knowing that Union Pacific and Metro, because of Union Pacific and Metro's operations, there are many times, especially on the weekends, where trains get flipped from one side to the other. We would also have a main waiting area on the typically on the outbound side. So the point, I guess, of this is, as we get to it, that the floor plan in relation to the ramp over here, because of the ramp slope for accessibility, we have very limited space between York Street up to the station building. So we probably only have about 10 feet to work with on the east side. And on the west, we need to maintain some ADA parking and some storage. So with those, we're also confined. We're very confined on the west as well. This was just early on to give a sense of what could be in terms of massing, showing kind of the relation of the underground underpass, the existing underpass, and the structure on both sides. Again, this was, I'll get into a little bit later, but we had to take it far enough that we could reach out for funding at the state and federal level in terms of using some visualizations to explain that. So this is kind of the image that we used as we wrapped up phase one. And then just kind of a diagram to show how that pedestrian underpass would look. And then the new station here, the other station on the other side, the ramp on the south side, the warming shelters, and kind of that reworked parking. And again, these are much nicer without the pixelation. But one of the things we wanted to talk about towards the end of phase one, and the city was concerned by, was that while we were showing these images for funding, the clock tower, for example, There was a desire to obviously engage the public even further in the second phase. And as the project got funding and moved forward into engineering, to reach out and to try to figure out what this character would look like. So basically trying to keep the footprint of the building relatively in the same location, but really go through this exercise of different styles. You know, what's appropriate for the downtown has changed a lot, again, in the last 30 years. During the course of the project, there was a lot of development, and it continues to be a lot of development. The Opus project, for example, several of the condominium projects, and then some of the commercial buildings as well. So there's quite a variety between the historic buildings and new structures, and even in the new structures, a lot of diversity. So with that said, the project was successful in getting funding, and with that, the city decided to move into phase 2. And the first part of that is trying to determine what this architectural character is going to be to bring in the public, and that's why we're here today. So basically, not only to bring it up to speed in terms of what has happened in the past, but also to talk about the steps that we would see over the next probably 6 months in terms of that process to get to that point. So the first step that we had was on the beginning of this month. We met with the city council and talked about the approach to public outreach, just kind of reminding of the approach that we saw, getting confirmation on that. And the first step after that was obviously this meeting tonight, wanting to review what the steps are and an approximate timeline. And then this fall, going through a public visioning session. So we would anticipate as part of this, having invites and flyers to be distributed online through the city website, eBlasts, and other locations, physical locations, depending on COVID. And then we would see doing an online survey of architectural character, looking at the proportion, the program inside the station, and not necessarily looking at renderings of the station in the context of Elmhurst, but really trying to get the public and others to think about what the downtown, what this kind of new centerpiece of the downtown should look like, and what the character downtown is. So a lot of questions about visual preference is what we're anticipating. Part of that then would be moving forward from the online survey and actually having an open house or a workshop. And under the current circumstances with COVID, this becomes obviously a little more challenging, but we would see running a virtual workshop. And CDM Smith has done this in other parts of the country, and because of the COVID situation, this is an example for a project we've done in Texas, where we would actually create a 3-dimensional room that everyone could log into. We'd run a meeting introduction just like we're doing today with the public, with the commission. And then we would have, instead of physical boards, we'd have these virtual boards in a room. We would turn everyone loose. There would be virtual comment cards with this, and sign-in desk. And we'd let everyone go around to the different boards, see the exhibits, provide comments, and then we would do basically a summary at the end. Just showing an example of what we would likely see in terms of the format. We did a SurveyMonkey survey during phase 1 that was very successful, had a very high response rate. We'd see doing something very similar with the visual character. And this shows a physical board idea. In this case, it would become virtual, trying to get the public's input on the different character that they would see as preferred styles. So coming out of that would be the next, that we would see another ABC Commission meeting in the fall, late fall, probably early winter. In that, we would meet with you to talk about the outcomes of that online survey and the workshop, and then determine kind of 3 alternatives to move forward with that the team would investigate. And then come back closer to late winter and look at renderings, look at 3-dimensional models, drawings, and other exhibits to get your comments. And then after that, do a presentation to the committee of the whole. Again, this would be closer to spring of 2020-21 and get the final approval of the selected alternatives. Selected alternative. At that point, we can turn the engineering and architecture final design teams loose, and we would hope to do that in the spring of 2021. I know we're covering a lot of different things very quickly. One of the other parts I think that's important to celebrate, but also for some information, is that we had helped the city do a lot of these applications, and the city was very successful. So we have $14 million approximately from a congestion mitigation and air quality federal fund, federal surface transportation program, $2.4 million. The state of Illinois has a grade protection fund, which would be appropriated towards the underpass of this, which is $2 million. And then Metra, the city has had conversations with Metra, and Metra is willing to put in at least $2 million to the project and potentially more than that. So that's kind of a little bit of the funding history. The other part that's important to note is that there are dates because of those state and federal calendars of when that money is budgeted currently. So that would start in 2022. Okay. So it was a lot of material. So I'm sure there's a lot of questions and you're tired of hearing my voice. So
I was just going to say, Ben, a group of architects and builders that are here, so I'm sure there's going to be a lot of questions.
That's what I was afraid of.
And guys, we have to do it one at a time. We can't speak over each other. So who would like to ask a question first? The show of hands.
I would like to ask something.
Okay, who was that? I'm sorry.
Rich Barnes.
Rich, okay, Rich, go ahead.
So I think, Ben, it's all, looks great. And I know a lot of work has been put into it. Could you maybe just expand a little bit on how, and I know it's a tight area. I know there's certain things that have to be done in certain ways in order to accommodate, but the way I see the underpass is right now, a lot of people, I believe, who might be running for the train or need to get to the underpass are coming from Adele Place, which is a street that goes off to the south to that parking garage. Okay. The location that you have it right now is over to the east. And by the time they get to that, I'm just, and they walk down the ramp or they walk down the stairs or whatever it takes them. And I don't know the exact layout of it all. I can only see what you've got here, and I'm not sure which goes which way and which doesn't go which way. But
sure.
It seems like it is almost, and I'm not trying to be a smart guy or whatever, but it seems superfluous, because if they're going to walk that far to the east, they might as well just go to York and cross the tracks.
So,
okay. And it takes up a lot of space. And maybe I'm all wet on this, but I think the current location is ideal for that. And I know you can't get the ADA to work, coming straight down and all those sorts of things. I'm totally aware of that. And I know if you do it, you have to accommodate, but it just seems like it's so far out of the way for the people who would need to use it that I don't know that it's going to save them any time if they're in a rush to get to it. I'm not saying it's a good idea or a bad idea. I just know where it is now, and I know that's where people use it and where they come from to use it. And it's convenient because it's in the middle of the 2 blocks to get across the actual tracks, right? So I just was curious as to how that all evolved a little bit on your end to say, yeah, you know what? Hey, we're stuck with it here, or maybe that's the reason. I don't know, but I just wanted to maybe get some insight on that.
Absolutely. So, yeah, it's interesting when you present to different crowds. Everyone's interested in a different thing, and I guess I would say the level of technical interest is different. So this is good. So the first thing I would say, just to kind of head off part of this maybe, is there was a determination because of public comment to keep the existing tunnel. So I did not dwell on that because it didn't necessarily affect the site plan, but the existing underpass, it's right here,
Right.
which currently is the western edge of the station.
Okay.
What we would be doing is basically extending that tunnel from about this point here out to a new retaining wall, a new stair, and then a new stair on the other side.
Okay.
So we'd be maintaining that access, not being accessible, but to your point, if you're in that real rush, unfortunately, it's unlikely that someone in a wheelchair, if it's that tight, is going to be able to make it across. But we're maintaining this access here.
Okay. I wasn't, like
Sure.
I said, I haven't looked into everything, and I probably should have noticed that, but
No,
I didn't realize that was maintaining the existing one there. So I get it. I just that just seems like I don't even know what the cost of that ADA ramp would be for that underpass. It just seems like it's a huge expense, and in comparison, to the building even. And then it has to be maintained with, weather that we have in this area, those sorts of things. It's not covered, all those sorts of things. I don't know how, somebody in the wintertime navigates all that in a wheelchair, but I'm just throwing it out there, and I appreciate you enlightening me on the other one still being maintained. So
Thank you, Rich. Red, did you have a question?
I have a comment concerning the entire underpass situation. First of all, Ben, I want to tell you that for approximately 30 to 35 years of my professional architectural career, I was involved in public transit work. So make sure that I don't get to be a pain in your butt, because I can, let me tell you. But I've dealt with this kind of thing many, many times. But the real question that I had, and this may have been dealt with previously, I hate to see us preclude ourselves from some opportunities that might occur or that can occur along with this. I don't like underground tunnels. I don't like the ramps. I fear that some of the ramps can become equal to what we see at the Oak Park station. They're very narrow, they're messy, they're not kept clean. Was there consideration in going overhead outside and using elevators? And now I know elevators are supposedly expensive, but would we build a parking structure in this town without elevators? This is a transit facility, and there's no reason not to put elevators in here unless somebody has other reasons. But I fear that we may be keeping ourselves from some other opportunities by not going overhead and using glass. That solves a safety problem because it's well lit at night and you can see what's going on in the elevator shaft and up on the upper level where people are going back and forth. And it does cut out some of the concerns that Rich has about the amount of time that it takes to go up and down the various ramps. So that's a comment that I would like to just have the question answered as to whether or not this has been considered previously. And also, I think that this is a particularly important part of the safety aspects of this new endeavor. So I'll stop there.
Ben, before you start that, I'm going to piggyback on that question because I had written down a question about the ramp as well. Given how tight the site is, as you said, and the amount of ramp that it takes, the first thing that popped into my head is why isn't there an elevator on either side? It can't be significantly more expensive. Maybe I'm wrong. Than all that ramping, and it would free up so much real estate for other things. Whether the elevators go up and over or down and under is part of Red's question. But that's I just wanted to pose that in conjunction with Red's question, because there is the existing tunnel. I didn't realize either, like Rich hadn't, that the existing underground tunnel was being maintained. That works perfect for somebody that's in a hurry and doesn't want to wait for an elevator and is willing to run down the stairs. But I think a person that's challenged physically is going to prefer to take an elevator than take all that ramp in inclement weather. So there you have it. 2 questions in one.
So maybe I'll break this into two different parts here. So let's talk about cost maybe first, just because I think it's a little, I don't want to say easier, but so in terms of the cost of building an elevator versus building a ramp, I think the comment was made that it can't be significantly different. And in reality, that elevator may be slightly cheaper in initial capital costs than the civil and the retaining wall structure along the rail line. So the consideration, so first of all, yes, elevators were looked at. The long-term issue with elevators in terms of access, and Red, I can appreciate the work you've obviously done, is beyond the first day that you open it, there becomes this issue of maintenance. And those maintenance costs will be negotiated as part of the final lease with Union Pacific. And I think maybe Corey or others might be able to speak to some of the conversations that we've had. But the issue will be to maintain 2 elevators, because if one fails on one side and is out of service, then the whole system basically is failed. What we're seeing out of the Chicago Transit Authority, what we're seeing out of Metra, that obviously operate a lot of facilities, and working with them, and then also around the country, is a preference to ramps whenever possible. Because while there is some maintenance long-term in terms of water infiltration, concrete repair, the opportunities for one side or the other side to fail is much lower long-term. So that was basically, it's not the initial capital construction, it becomes the maintenance. Very important comment about weather and accessibility. So we did have a conversation with Union Pacific and Metra early on when we were looking at this in terms of the ramp, about trying to cover it. And I think that isn't necessarily dead, but what we're talking about now is doing either a heat resistant or resistant coil, or a hydronic system built into the ramp for that snow melt, so that we're not getting additional salt degradation of the concrete. That's something that we've done in other locations. In terms of the overpass, yes, I do not have as part of this slide presentation, but we did a full study of overpass versus underpass. A couple of the concerns with that, one was that obviously a ramp would go out the window, and the only option would be to do an elevator. So it had some of the same issues. The second would be, in that condition, you're conditioning a large space all the way up, and you're conditioning the overpass. There's also a lot of unsupervised area in that. But more importantly was the scale. The Union Pacific, but just all freight lines run these double, I'm sure you've seen them out there, the double stacks. Yeah, double stacks. Yeah. I think. Yeah, I was trying to think of the technical term there. And because of that, I'd have to go back to my drawing, but you're up, I think it's 30 feet, I want to say, at the bottom of the structure. So it gets into what we struggled with early. I don't want to say struggled with, but in part of that evaluation became it would be a very dominant factor in the downtown. We did look at the scale of that, and I know, sorry, this is near impossible to see because I noticed that PowerPoint had scaled everything down, but this was a study of kind of the height in relation to some of the downtown existing buildings at that time before, let's say, Opus was built for that structure. Because even when you're up 30 feet and you've got to add, let's say, at least minimum 10 feet of clearance with some roof structure. So, and then finally, we're going into a curve with the tracks. Sorry if I can point this out. Starting to go into a curve. So depending on where that structure is, the other concern that Union Pacific and Metra have in terms of operating the train is if we put a tower, let's say on both sides, and I'm just talking about going up, for example, because that's one of the questions. Putting a structure that tall starts to impede some of the vision for the operators. And that was another concern that they had was they like to see as far as possible on the platform. You know, that train, the conductor sits up pretty high and they want to have as much visibility. I'm not going to say that that was a hard no, but it was a concern at that time. So there's kind of the downtown scale, which, you know, that was a big concern. There was the visibility. There was definitely having to go with elevators, you know, some of these other things. Oh, pardon me. The other one was long-term maintenance of that structure, because when you have an exposed bridge like that, an enclosed bridge, let's say it's steel, you're going to have to go through painting on a pretty regular, I'm just throwing this out, but maybe a maximum of 10 years. But likely it's going to be shorter than that. You're operating then above active Union Pacific tracks, so it's going to be extremely costly long-term to maintain that structure, and the responsibility would fall likely on the site. So it's a lot of talking. And in terms of elevators down, yes, that's absolutely a possibility. Obviously, the city does have groundwater issues, so one of the other concerns, not only with losing an elevator on each side, conditioning both of those elevators to make them last a little bit longer, but also water infiltration takes a really heavy toll on elevators. And then again, from what we've seen, I know working in the city is a little bit different, obviously, in terms of the abuse that these take, but it can feel like a safety hazard sometimes for those that basically have to get in kind of this enclosed space and then ride down to an underpass. So, you know, it's one of those where I won't, you know, it's not an absolute 100%, but that's how we got to this point.
So to follow up on that, Ben, if you did an elevator up or down, would you have to do a stairwell as well as an elevator? So if the elevator went down and people were up there, they could come down the stairs? You know, that's a code question, I think, more than anything else. I'm not sure that.
Yeah, I mean, I'm trying to envision the question, sorry. If there was this, so if the elevator, let's say, goes down and there's an underpass, yeah, you would have to have another means of egress out of there.
Yeah, Rich.
I just one more thing, and obviously you guys have been involved in this a lot longer than us just looking at this, but can you just explain why, if I'm struggling with the whole needing the ramp to go from one side to the other? Is it because a wheelchair cannot cross tracks? Is it because, and if so, I understand that, you know, people need to get to both sides for inbound and outbound. But you're going to have drop off on either side. You're going to have handicap spots on either side. I'm just having a hard time figuring out, maybe it's because you have an underpass that everybody else can use going down the stairs and you have to provide something equivalent. Otherwise, I'm I haven't had time to look into ADA or anything like that, and I'm sure everybody else in your team already has. So maybe I just want to make sure that that is a necessary requirement for the project, and I'm sure you already have.
Sure.
Ben, if, I'll answer to that, and then I have a couple of just questions or comments. My daughter's in a wheelchair, so we're going to stick with the ramp. I'm not going to go into detail on it, but yep, she deserves a ramp just like everybody else deserves access. It's not so much just wheelchairs as well. If you ever take the train a lot, as I've been doing in the last year, there's a lot of people with rolling luggage and everything else trying to get up and down those staircases of the narrow existing subway that we have. I like it. I like that you put the ramp there and not on the west side. It keeps the entire station back from York Street, opening up a sight line. It doesn't look so crowded as if that two stations were pushed east further. My only three questions I had was flipping the ramp. I like the doorway coming out of the waiting area. On every one of your renderings is a single door. Page 18 there. Yeah, it just seems awfully, for most people sitting in that waiting room, they either get in a single file line to go out the single door, or they walk all the way to the end of the station. When as that train pulls up, it's a bum rush to get on. So all your renderings, they all had a single door there. Maybe think about opening that up to a double. And then one other comment I had was your page at the end there with the sharing cost grant programs and all that. I think we'd be remiss if we didn't have some sort of number in there of what Elmhurst is going to cost us residents, because I'm sure that hand is going to go up in meetings from here going forward. Just a round number for people of what it's going to cost us would be nice to put out there and make available. Otherwise, I like everything about it. It's due. We've had that old yucky station for as long as I can remember, 52 years. It's due. It looks, I like what you've done with it.
Thanks, Steve.
So the other comment about the tunnel where it's being located was not just, we keep talking about the commuters, it's also for any resident that's walking down York Street. There's 150 trains a day that go through that intersection, so quite often you're waiting for a train to go through. To keep the fluidity going for the pedestrian that's in the downtown, to go from the north to the south or south to the north. That's why it's an easy, noise a ramp, there'll be a stairwell there to go down quickly, so there's a wide ramp to just keeps pedestrians moving also, not even a product.
That's a good point.
Thank you.
Red, did you have another question? I thought I saw your hand up a minute ago.
Well, no, I would like to talk about this issue a bit more if we can, but we don't have to do it now. We could do something else, I think, at some other point on it.
Which issue are you talking about? The ramp and elevator?
Ramps and elevators.
Okay.
For example, have you thought about the potential graffiti problem in ramps? You probably have, Ben, but I've seen an awful lot of it. I hope we don't get into an awful lot of that in Elmhurst, but
Graffiti?
Graffiti on the concrete.
Yeah. So I will say this. I would say that graffiti can be anywhere that's especially in a hidden location, right? So whether that's the underpass itself, and I think, again, Public Works can speak to some of the challenges they've had even with just the existing situation. I've seen it on interior of elevators. I've seen just some other nasty things on the inside of elevators, let's say. And I'm not pushing, I'm just, kind of on the concrete walls. One thing I will say, because we did, that is obviously a concern. You want to bring as much natural light in. So instead of just having the ADA ramp going from the station down with this turn back, we also saw having the stair full width is what we're proposing right now. So that would be, at least 10 feet, if not more wide. So when you're doing that and having this whole area exposed, I guess the point would be that this should be very visible from above. or more so than an enclosed closed area. So I'm not going to say it's perfect. A lot of it's going to be trying to mitigate that as much as possible with materials and coatings and things. But we all know that that's not going to be 100%. Nothing's going to be 100%. So at that point, it just becomes trying to mitigate it, trying to keep it as open and visible as possible. And we're trying to maximize that tunnel open, or the pedestrian underpass, with a 12-foot diameter, which is significantly wider than there is today. So all of those are strategies that we're trying to employ. I did want to, I don't want to take away from anybody else's comments or time, but back to one of the comments David made about others using it. The other benefit is capacity. So not only if the train is stopped, which sometimes obviously happens during events, for example, but we also have a lot of cases with people with strollers and bikes and things like that when those are closed off. And I've seen that out there, and it's another option at least. But that's where I'll stop with there.
Hey, Ben, I have another quick question for you. Do you know off the top of your head how many parking spaces were removed, or the net loss of parking? Boy, it's been a while since we put the numbers together, but yes, it's I want to say just as a percentage of commuter overall parking, it was a 5% reduction. Just the commuter portion, not overall parking. Right. But that the latest Metra surveys of parking usage that we had, and were basically 10% open. So that was even before I think one of the most recent garages came online. I'd have to go back and double check, but we knew that we were still well under the utilized capacity. But I can get those numbers for you. Any other questions from the commissioners? Excuse me. I think my questions have all been answered. So, having said that, is there anything further we need?
Next meeting will be later in the fall, most likely, Ben?
That was currently the plan that was proposed, yes.
Okay. Well, thank you, Ben, very much.
I will say it's been an absolute pleasure to talk to everyone, and it brings back a lot of memories of kind of the different thought lines here. So thank you very much for your time this evening.
Clearly a lot of hard work went into it to see where you're at.
Appreciate that. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Ben.
Thanks, Ben.
Have a great evening.
So that concludes then the Metro Station presentation. We'll move on then to the next item on the agenda, which is 126 South York Street facade grant. Do you have that, or can we get it up?
Can we do that right now? I didn't want to do one time the case today.
Presentation here to do that?
Yes, both groups are downstairs. Emily, you have both groups down there, correct?
I would.
Yes, I do.
I would invite them to present anything they want to present. That'd be welcome.
Do you want us to pull up anything on the screen, or are you just going to speak? You can just.
No, I was.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, sounds good. Thank you.
Am I muted?
No. Nope, you're all good to go.
All right. So in speaking with Bruce, he said that you had all the drawings and information. Is that correct?
I believe that is correct. Yes, I think we all delivered that.
Okay. So I'll just make my comments very brief. 126 South York Road. It's just kind of been a rundown, small one-story building. We're building a office building there that I'm going to move my office. I'm currently at 105 South Adele. Grew up in Elmhurst, went to York High School, still at my home in Elmhurst. Just my whole life been connected with Elmhurst. I want to stay in Elmhurst. I'm moving my office into 126 South York Road. The facade that we're building has essence of Frank Lloyd Wright's Falling Water. You know, and just some of kind of its general theme. So I think it'll be very fitting for that area in downtown Elmhurst. It's going to be beautiful. And the fact that I'm moving my own office in there, you know, I don't want to be in something that doesn't really reflect what we're doing. David, you're muted.
Dave,
I'm sorry, point of order, just for the record, can you state your name?
Sorry.
Oh, we see as the applicant.
No problem. I'm Jack Kozar.
thank you, Dave. Red?
Just one question here of the panel, I guess. I noticed on the drawings that your intent is to use Dryvit on a portion of that front wall. And my experience with Dryvit has been that in some cases it's not a very durable material. And I wonder what you guys think about that being right there next to the sidewalk, where it's can be bumped and kicked, and little kids can run into it with bikes and things like that.
Right. There's a product, we're all aware there's a Panzer mesh product that can be put in that really toughens it up, but it's still a valid question as to if you know, just I guess to point out to you that it'll take a lot of abuse at the lower level there.
Okay, I guess the answer then is as long as you're ready to maintain it, when it needs to be maintained, it's probably a good choice. It's not a very big part of the wall, but it just concerned me when I saw it.
Yeah, I mean, given the fact that I'm going to be there every single day, if there becomes an issue with it, we're going to repair it, or, you know, if we need to change it. I've had fairly good track record with using Dryvit, especially in a small area such as that. I feel we'll be okay, but, you know, if we learn along the way, either way, we're going to, you know, I'm not going to be living with something that looks lousy.
Okay.
In disrepair, whatnot.
Dan, did you have a question? Saw your hand go up. I said Dan. No? Okay. All right. So the request is for, and correct me if I'm wrong on this, Bruce, the request is for $20,000 for the facade, and then $30,000 towards life safety items, for a total request of $50,000. Is that correct? That's correct. That's correct. Are there any questions from the commissioners on the request or the drawings that have been submitted? Any discussion on that?
Do you have any? Well, I have one question. I'm sorry.
Right, sure.
As a commission, are we worried about what kind of colors and things are going to go into the town? All I see is black and white drawings. I'm not sure. You know, maybe the applicant likes orange and you know, other extreme colors. Are we concerned about looking into any of that? It doesn't bother me either way, but I just don't. I'm trying to figure out. Are we concerned about materials like Red was saying? You know, should we, you know, maybe be thinking about, you know, stucco instead of being a Dryvit town, or should we be looking at colors in addition to all this? How far do we go with our, you know, our arm, I guess?
Well, let's just ask the question. Do you have the Dryvit is going to be what color? Do you know?
The whole building is going to be earth tones. If you were to just Google what Falling Water looks like, Frank Lloyd Wright's Falling Waters in Pennsylvania, it's very earth tone. You've got some, I think it's river stone. The Dryvit is like a brownish. I don't know how else to describe it to you, but there's certainly no bold colors on that. It just would not lend to the project at all.
Yeah, I'm not insinuating that you would be doing bold colors, and even if you did, there are some great bold colors and places look great with them. I'm just thinking as a commission, you know, do we want to have applicants bring in or show samples of what those materials actually are going to be? Every product you can get a sample of, okay? And I'm just throwing it out there for not specifically for this one. I'm just trying to figure out where we want to go as we move forward with it all. Okay,
I
whether
think,
it's this project or another.
I think that any applicant is really served well by providing more information, not less, and more colors and samples, or color rendering is always helpful. There isn't a lot going on in terms of the size of this building. So I think we all get the picture here, but in the future, clearly, I think we all know that the entire project is better presented with color. I don't
Right,
know.
but are we going to require that?
Okay, all right. So Bruce generally asks for a color rendering when projects are coming in. They're very easy to do these days. In this case, we didn't get one, but it's not a it's not a 20-story building.
Right.
So, questions or comments? Oh, Dave, yeah.
Yeah, Jeff, I don't know, maybe a better suited to Bruce or Mike on if they can give us a quick rundown on this whole grant program, 22 lineal feet times $800, 17, what is that? Minimum available building exterior, what costs and what, I guess what would be the word of oversight for the residents' tax monies is going into that whole page of the costs. What is our responsibilities? And if there is, if it doesn't cost as much, does the city not have to pay those numbers?
Okay. That's the way the program's written.
Okay.
If you're qualified for the facade program, we'll pay you $800 per lineal feet of frontage, and it happens to say the minimum available is $20,000. So he qualifies for that. He's actually spending $63,000. So if you cut that in half, and we were going to share 50-50 on whatever he spent, we $31,000. But we're limiting it to the $20,000. So it's a fair deal. He does comply with the way program is written.
It's a 50-50 split reimbursement. He has to spend the money first and show that he spent it. We'll give him 50% up to $20,000.
Okay, I just thought it was, for future use of somebody viewing this, they should realize that the city has safeguards in place, or whatever you want to term them.
For the $30,000, that's qualifies for life safety and ADA.
Okay.
ADA may have to win. We'll pay 50% of that. Sprinklers run to see $30,000. Any other life safety.
By the way, the safeguard is this commission reviewing.
Have you seen the new Taco Bells?
I don't recall seeing them illuminated.
If you have, they use the same type of metal fascia, a different arrangement, but the concept of backlit horizontal metal channels is executed on them.
I have one other question.
Sure.
The sign would be mounted on those panels?
Now, at this moment, he's discussing putting his name on the front and possibility of logos on the north and south sides.
What is the total investment, the budget for this entire project?
The owner is holding all the information on budgeting and bidding to himself. I am not involved in that process. But my guess, 800 to 900K at least, probably $1 million.
Okay. And I'm sorry, did you say that the signs would be attached to the metal panels?
Correct. That's what I believe that they'll want to do.
More than likely. I'm not trying to pin you down.
Yes, more than likely. Yeah. See, I don't know. He hasn't even decided on his name yet. Okay. So, there's been no branding work, no graphic design work done. As an architect, it's really disadvantageous for me. I mean, I've been able to bring electrical feeds there with the assumption that there is going to be some sort of light source within each of the signs or logos. But, I'm making best guesses as to what their electrical draw might be or what their final location might be.
Okay.
But that, a sign goes under a separate permit anyways.
Rich?
John, how high are you bringing the new parapet or the new front wall and the side walls up? Than what's shown in the picture that's, of the existing?
Correct. Actually, that's the existing parapet height now.
Okay, so what's on the sides you're taking down?
Actually, as you'll look, all right, in the existing picture, all right, there's that one that runs, I'll call it east-west. That's the one we want to work with.
Very good.
So that, all right, you'll see in the front, it's slightly shorter. I think that's about 12 to 15 inches.
Got it.
We're just going to fill that up. Yeah.
Understood. I have to say that when I saw the rendering and I was really intrigued by that. But then I didn't see it on the drawings, and I was that was going to be one of my questions as to why they didn't match. And now I understand what that is, but it's obviously become a lot plainer than
yes, it has.
Yeah.
I'm hoping for a phase 2 on this job. Once the restaurant is open and they make some money, then they can open up the PUD bag if they have to. And if it takes extra time, the restaurant's open, making money, then they're in a much better position than they are now.
And one last thing, I know sometimes renderings are what they are, and everything's evolving. But on your rendering, there's 3 windows on the side of the building. I think because of the way the parking is located for this building, you have a lot of open space on each side of the building. So you see more of what we would call frontage, I guess, because it goes back and there's a lot of open space. Sure. In the rendering, it shows what appears to be the drive-it stopping in between the second and third windows, and
that's incorrect.
Bring that back to where the metal stops, I guess.
Well, I think let me point out a few things. First, the above picture is old. Those 3 windows are actually existing right now.
Okay.
All right. A long time ago, when we were hoping to be under construction, because this has been a 3-year project for me, we, under separate permit, actually went ahead and did the structural work for those 3 windows and put them in. So if you drive by it today, those 3 windows will be there. And your comment about the rendering and the extension of the fascia and the drive-it is absolutely spot on, because it's our intent. You'll see where there's a jog in the roof coping.
Yes.
We'd like to run the fascia and the drive-it to that jog, because it seems like the logical break point.
Right. Right.
I would encourage any of the commissioners just to Google the new Taco Bell design.
Thank you.
It's completely different from these line drawings. Yeah, I see that there. A color rendering or updated rendering would have really gone a long way here. I have one other question for you. Yes. On the front facade, appears at the bottom of those metal panels that they flare out. They no longer do that according to your line drawings. Is that correct?
Could you repeat that, please?
At the bottom of the metal panels on the front, facing York Street, in the rendering that you submitted originally, it looks like the metal panel flares out towards the street a little bit.
Actually, they're monoplane. There's no accent at the top or bottom where they come in or out. They're all 8 inches away from the masonry surface. They're mounted on unistrut type metal framing and 1.25 inch steel angles.
Okay.
There's been some talk about changing it. I mean, if you look at the Taco Bell prototype, they go from 4-inch to 8-inch panels at the bottom. They have sort of an accent streak horizontally. This one was generated by the client who wanted it done this way. I don't know where else to go with that.
Signage isn't a part of this, and it's really not our purview. That'll all be done separately and will comply, I'm sure. Commissioners, any additional questions?
Yeah, this is Dan. I guess I just Googled the Taco Bell. I suppose the one I came up with had purple backlighting. So maybe to Rich's remark earlier, I don't know if that's something that's reviewed with as the sign process, that the lighting also.
No.
That's not considered a sign. No,
Accent lighting on the building.
So John, is it going to be purple?
Actually, my suggestion to him was to spend a little extra money and to get LEDs that can change color. Not that he would do it in a Las Vegas crazy fashion, but you could do a Friday color light, or a Thursday different color light, that kind of thing.
There's a building in Woodfield.
Yes.
And I'm gonna tell you, it's beautiful.
Yeah, I've seen it. Yep, it would be great for the holidays to be able to put different colors on. I agree.
Yeah, and it's easy to do.
Jeff, if I get a moment.
Absolutely.
So as I understand it, you're not going to have the way the lights were projecting because you were showing a covered sidewalk there.
Correct. That covering is gone.
Okay. I mean, I'm glad somebody is doing something with that building. It makes me really happy. It's hard to vote on something when you don't know what the facade is going to look like, but in the end, it's going to be better than what's sitting there.
Yeah, the line drawings are accurate.
Yeah. Okay.
Does any commissioners have any questions on the actual request?
No.
Yeah, 53,000. No, that's not it.
Well,
$56,640 split between the facade money and life safety improvements. There being no questions, can I get a motion to approve the application?
So moved.
Second, please.
I happily second it.
Discussion on that?
I'd like to discuss something. Just once again, I'm trying to get the commission squared away. Would it be to our advantage before we vote or can we, without totally saying no, you're not getting this, to ask for additional information? Like David mentioned, it would be nice to see what we're voting on, really, as opposed to a rendering that doesn't apply any longer. I don't know. I'm not looking to prolong the agony on anybody's part. I'd rather vote on something that we're going to vote on. And if they are going to make decisions to, for example, bring the metal back to the parapet drop and to drive it as well, I mean, I'd like to know that was, going to be part of the project and not just, a suggestion. And now it's not going to be, something that's, they have to be held to, I guess. So,
well, the line drawings are what they'll be held to, but I don't think that a rendering is a required item for the application. So I don't think we could require the applicant to bring one. While they're very helpful,
sure,
and a picture's worth 1,000 line drawings, I agree, but I don't think that we could hold him up for it. If there's questions you want to ask, I think that we can strongly encourage future applicants to provide, accurate and updated color renderings because they're so inexpensive these days. But I don't know that that's a reason to not vote on it. You certainly can vote no if you're not happy with it. And I would invite you to ask any more questions.
Yeah, no, I just want to know. I just want to make sure I know what we're voting on. So if we're voting on the line drawings, then that's what I'll make my vote on. It's fine. It's maybe more of a housekeeping for future, I guess, is what I'm trying to get.
We can encourage people in the future strongly. Color rendering.
It is on the way. Okay, I mean, as you can see by Houston renderings on it.
Coming in the next 5 minutes.
I wish. Believe me, I've been checking my phone every minute to see if he made it.
Okay.
Then we have a motion. It's been seconded.
I'll take a roll.
We're going to do a roll call vote.
Bruce, Jeff Budno?
Yes.
Rich Barnes?
Yes.
Fred Beebe?
Yes.
Dave McKenna?
Yes.
Dan Lanza?
Yes.
Passed unanimously.
Unanimously it is. Congratulations and good luck.
Thank you, gentlemen. Indeed. Hopefully, you'll all come by and have a smoothie and some of his other delicious Asian items at some time.
Fantastic.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Open up, he's got two-sided parking there to open back up as well.
That is all
That's
the
needed,
business we
yeah.
have for the evening, so we will. Oh, I'm sorry. Any other business that we have? Does anybody have any other business?
Other business, real quick. Hey, Rich, you're duly noted your comments. We'll make sure that future applicants have more information and more updated information.
Well, yeah, I just think it should be consistent. That's all. I mean,
right. And I don't think old renderings that don't apply anymore is helpful. It's probably more deleterious to the applicant than it is. Sometimes they don't cooperate.
So, not to beat a dead horse, I just want to understand it. There's just a minimum amount. I mean, here this man is doing 3 times the size of the last applicant, and he's getting about the same dollar amount, and he's spending quite a bit more. But that's just the minimum of what we have available, and they both met it. Is that correct?
That is true.
It's all based on a linear facade.
There used to be.
The idea is that this building could be a building right next to it, right? So we're paying for the facade. We're incentivizing rehabilitation of the facade, the street wall, basically. So your grant is based on your linear footage, the frontage of the building.
But if you go to the life safety, his sprinkler system is going to cost 4 times what it is for the 126 South York or whatever it was. It's going to cost at least 4 times.
Well, most of that is because it's a restaurant.
Yeah.
Things aren't significantly different in size. The Rainbow's bigger for sure, but
26 is going a fire sprinkler.
Right. And here's a case where 126 South York has sat in really almost deplorable condition for a long time, and maybe this you could say that this incentive was what it took to get that off the dime and get
I agree. Yeah.
improved. And the same can be said of both. They've both been buildings that needed significant improvements for a long time.
yeah, I think they're both good for the town. I mean, I obviously materials and what they're actually going to look like, I think it's pretty important, as well. I mean, because if we're just looking at the numbers and the bottom line, that's all great, but I really think things should be presented as to what they are going to be and not half and half. And
exactly, I agree completely with that. And the cost of a color rendering now is so insignificant that
as long as it's consistent, that's all. I mean,
right.
So
there's no other business. Take a motion to adjourn. Anybody?
Motion to adjourn.
I'll second.
Thank you. All those in favor? Roll call. We have to roll call. I'm sorry.
Jeff Puzzle,
Yes.
Rich Barnes,
Yes.
Red Beebe,
Yes.
Dave McKenna,
Yes.
Dan Monza.
Yes.
That's unanimous.
It's unanimous. It's sufficient. We're done.
Who seconded that? That was Rich Barnes. James and Rich.
Thank you all.
Good night, guys. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good night.
Yep.